Hello and welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damlola Oshaki, and this morning I'm starting with Vanguard on the paper review. Vanguard is leading with sealing of secretariat, PDP fumes as Tinubu intervenes. It's brazen abuse of power that's coming from PDP. May go ahead with BOT and NEC meetings. PDP 4,793 orders given 14 days grace. It's not political witch hunt that's coming from Wike's aid. PDP group to Wike, you are the real betrayer. As Bakide Umba keep mum on the FCT minister, you can see that story on page 5. FCTA FIRS disagree over ground rents. That's can be seen on page 9 of Vanguard newspaper. And here there's a picture showing the PDP secretariat sealed off. And on page 6, DPO feared dead as youth set Kano police station ablaze. 42 killed in fresh air's attack on Benue communities. You can see that on page 7. On page 9, Saudi Arabia deports Sheikh Gumi barred from Hajj. Above the banner on page 20, congestion hit Lagos port amid the truck restriction. Kidnappers can eat Kuba estate. Old residents hostage abduct two. Plot to bomb Abuja barracks started as a IED explodes. Accused carrier injures two. Lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, Edo Delta, kidnappers turned residents into cash cows. You can see that on page 12 of Vanguard newspaper. Now let's move to the Punch. Punch leading story says tension in PDP. Governors BOT reconvene as NEC meeting stalls. Damaguma uncertain about a NEC meeting. Atiku others shun national and caucus meeting. You can see that on page 2 and on page 25, $750 million loan. World Bank pressures Nigeria for fresh tax hike. Oyo pays Oshun 5 billion naira in Lautech ownership due. You can see that on page 28. Tinubu to inaugurate Lagos Calabar Highway Section 1 Saturday. That can be seen on page 29. And lastly, on the Punch newspaper, Insurgency, Tinubu Zulum in talks over forest guards deployment. Suspected elder skill corp and 41 Benue villagers. The Guardian leading story says opposition's internal crisis, legal battle threatens 2027 election. You can see that on page. And on the news page 8, over 1.2 billion people affected by infertility globally. 1 year lament closure extortion of Onisha drug market traders. EFCC recovers part of 1.3 trillion naira from collapsed CBEX. Ground rent. Tinubu intervenes as FCTA grants 14-day grace to defaulters. Reps withdraw compulsory voting bill over public pushback. You can see that on page 5 and directly below the banner. Children's Day, tackle bullying, prioritize rights, welfare, stakeholders urge government. You can see that on newspaper 3. And lastly, on the Guardian newspaper, demand for C of O drops in Lagos as state upgrades market. You can see that on page 7. And lastly, the nation leading story says businesses eat by airlines flight delays, cancellation. 33,235 delayed, 1,189 cancelled out of 70,543 trips last year. You can see that on page 4. Uncertainty over PDP neck meeting. Demagum condemns secretariat seal-off. Caucus meeting adjourned till this morning. No Borno Council will fall to insurgents. Zulum vows. Governor briefs the president. You can see the stories on pages 4 and 5 of the Nation newspaper. Speaker Abbas withdraws a compulsory voting bill. Panel gets 4 weeks on the 753 duplexes. You can see that on page 6. And above the banner, 2025 UTME results are ranked best in 12 years despite glitches. PDP, Access Bank, others get 14-day waiver to clear FCT ground rents. And lastly, on the Nation newspaper, suicide bombing attempt foiled at Abuja Army Barracks. You can see that story on page 35 of the Nation newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the daily. Join us after the break for a brief analysis of some of the stories. Welcome back. If you're just joining me, this is Today the News on Vanguard Life. My name is Damlola Ogunshaki, and joining me to analyze some of the stories on the front pages this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, the publisher of Illustrated Pages Today, Lekki Today, and Ikeja GRA Today. Good morning, Mr. Dayo.
Good morning, Damilola. Good morning to all of you.
Yes, now following the decision of the Federal Capital Territory Administration to sue the National Secretariat of People's Democratic Party (PDP) over its inability to pay fees regarding, ground rent for 28 years, the PDP yesterday they accused the federal government of brazen abuse of power. What do you think about the seal-off?
Well, PDP is trying to make it look like it's politics, but not everything is politics. I mean, it's not only the PDP that was called to order in this instance, but my view is that 28 years is a long time. And out of those 28 years, PDP was in power for quite a bit of those 28 years. So it means that they were ruling with impunity. If they didn't meet their own financial obligations, even when they were in power, you're supposed to, as a leader, lead by example. You're supposed to set a good example. So how can a whole party be negligent and derelict in its financial obligations and not pay the ground rent for the premises it occupies? So if you look at it, even the FIRS, which is a government agency and which is currently being run by this administration, they also were brought to book for owing that kind of money. So, I mean, um, let's let's not always see everything that government does as having a political motive in this particular instance. Even though I do have my differences with Nyesom Wike on many issues, in this particular instance, I think he's perfectly in order because as responsible citizens, we should all meet our corporate and social responsibilities as well as financial ones. So, um, ground rent is a condition of you occupying a property and enjoying the benefits thereof that are provided by government. First of all, you government owns all land, so even if you build on it, you've leased the land from government. You should be paying your annual rent. Then all the services, land use charge is what goes to providing roads, goes to providing lighting, gutters, waste management. All the services we enjoy come from payment of that land use tax. So I think the PDP trying to color it as a political issue that Wike is on a manhunt, he's trying to exert his power because things did not go well in the PDP negotiation. They had a settlement committee recently chaired by Bukola Saraki that is trying to resolve the internal problems within the PDP. And Wike pulled out of those talks recently, the last few days. So it's been rumored that this is his way of getting back at the PDP because they were not on the same page when it came to the settlement talk, so that this is a vengeance move. But I think overall, it is simply seeking for accountability and transparency and asking people to do the right thing in terms of our financial obligations. I see nothing wrong with it. Those who owe should pay.
But 28 years of non-payment of ground rent by PDP, how does it reflect on the enforcement and mechanism of the FCT? I mean, it's a long time.
Well, you see, there's this thing in Nigeria that involves political pressure and connections. And remember, out of those 28 years, I think APC has been in power. Okay, so Buhari did 8 years, Tinubu has done 2. That's 10 years of APC. So out of the 28 years, that means 18 years PDP did not pay that they were in power. So if they did not pay, that's what I'm saying, they were ruling with impunity because they couldn't hold themselves to account. So during those 18 years, whoever was in charge of the FCT did not do the right thing in terms of making those who are obligated to pay. Even now, I hear there's already political pressure on the presidency to backtrack on some of the interdiction. For example, now the president has said, okay, we give you 14 days waiver, right? That's because of political pressure. In the FCT, which is the seat of our politics, there's bound to be political pressure. So all this time they were not paying, the FCT administration had to look the other way because they couldn't force them to pay because all the people who are not paying, they are politically connected people. PDP was in power for so many of those 28 years, 18 of them. How do you compel them to pay when they're the party in power? Then by the time the APC took over 10 years ago, chances are that the political patronage system was so entrenched already that it takes a person like Wike who takes no prisoners and takes no apologies from anybody. It takes a person like him to be able to confront this monster and say, I don't care whose ox is God, you're going to pay. So the time has just come. There will always be a time to pay the piper, and I think that time is here now with a person like Wike who brooks no nonsense from anybody.
So, are there policy measures that can be implemented in order to ensure timely payment of ground rent by political parties?
It's a moral issue. It's just simply that our leadership is not doing the right thing. And if the leadership is not doing the right thing, how do they expect the followership to comport themselves? I don't think we need legislation to make people meet their financial obligations. There's already legislation in place. If you don't pay your house, you lose your house. That's the bottom line. If you don't pay, they can put a lien on your house and they can go to court for you to forfeit the property. So that's already policy and law that constrains you to do the right thing. So what God Wike is trying to do is to enforce the existing law and say, look, the law says you must pay this thing, and if you don't pay, we can take your house, we can sell it, or we can demolish it. So he's just enforcing existing law. So there's no additional policy required. The law's already in place. It's just for us as a people to do the right thing.
All right, let's move away from that. The World Bank has asked the federal government to issue a presidential order raising excise duties on seen goods such as alcohol, tobacco, and sugary drinks as a key requirement under the 750 million loan granted to Nigeria to reform its non-oil revenue mobilization efforts. What's your take on this?
Well, Nigeria's revenue base is largely dependent on this oil and gas thing. And every administration has sought to diversify that income base because we have little control over world oil prices and restiveness in the Niger Delta and all kinds of things that can affect that income stream. So we've been trying to get away from total dependence on oil and gas and develop other sectors. So the World Bank is saying, okay, so you want to borrow 750 million naira dollar loan, we will give it to you under certain conditions. And some of those conditions are that government as an entity has got to be less dependent on oil and gas revenue. See, most governments in the world, the way they are structured, they earn their revenue from taxes, income taxes, corporate taxes, excise taxes. That's how government funds itself across the world. We have an anomalous setup, right? Usually, things like this oil we're getting in the Niger Delta, it belongs to the people who own the land, not the government. Then you pay royalties and taxes to the government. So government runs itself on taxes. So World Bank is trying to move us in that direction of global best practices, which is the way most other countries run themselves. Because if tax is predictable and tax is basically stable, so if that's where you get your revenue from, you can fund your budget because you know how much is coming in. Taxation is not subject to wild swings like oil and gas prices, and all of a sudden war breaks out in Ukraine and Russia, and it affects global oil supply, which has an immediate impact on the price. Taxes, on the other hand, are stable. Even if we're fighting anywhere, tax is tax, you will still get your money. So what they're saying is, look, let's not put the burden on the poor people, right? Who are the people who smoke cigars and cigarettes? Who are the people who drink beer and whiskey? Who are the people who drink Coke and Fanta and all? There are people who have extra disposable income. They're not people who are still scrounging for 3 square meals a day. So that's why they call them sin taxes. These are goods that basically finance a profligate lifestyle, a lifestyle of luxury and pleasure. They're not staple things that are absolutely essential for survival. So they're saying, put an excise tax on these things, the prices will go up. But of course, it is the disproportionately wealthy who generally patronize these goods, is them that will pay. So that's a way for you to begin to raise government revenue outside the oil and gas sector. So they've given us certain targets that in terms of this taxation, they want us to increase the intake up to certain levels, and that to give us this money, they've given us certain parameters we must meet. By the time you raise these taxes to this amount, we give you so much of the 750. You raise this. Well, question I want to ask, or I've been pondering, is why are we continuing to borrow? We borrow. In the last administration, we had borrowed so much, and this administration came into power saying that they intended to pay down our debt. There's been a lot of browbeating and chest beating about how our foreign reserves have improved, how we've reduced indebtedness and all. But every other day, all you're seeing on the papers is want to borrow from here, borrow from there, borrowing from African Development Bank, borrowing from World Bank, borrowing from that. And you say, what exactly are we borrowing this money to do? Because you look around and you don't see that much difference in our lives in terms of all the money that's been borrowed, So I wonder, is it really absolutely necessary? Because remember, whatever you borrow, you must pay back. And it might not be this government that's borrowing that will pay back. So basically, it's a mortgage on our future. So I don't really understand why we need this 750 million and the positive effect it's going to have versus the pain it will cause. Because you might say that, well, okay, so it's not poor, it's not poor people that are drinking whiskey and smoking cigars and drinking coke, but they have a knock-on effect that will ultimately trickle down to the middle class and the working class people. And consider this, they're also trying to increase telecoms tax now, and they are still considering data and airtime and even telephony as a luxury good. Yes, the administrators of this country still view telephone use as a luxury. Oh, if you can buy airtime, that means you have extra money. You're not hungry. If you're hungry, will you be considering buying airtime or buying data? But if the phone has become essential for daily survival now, a lot of people use it even just in the course of earning their daily bread. The phone is critical. And now we're going to be paying for more. They've signed, the bill has been signed and assented to by the president. So even the telephone tax is going up, and you suddenly see that you're paying more for data and more for airtime. So this whole notion of taxation to be able to justify borrowing money for opaque causes. When I say opaque, what I mean is I'm not really seeing what the purpose of the loan is in terms of the benefit it will deliver to the generality of Nigerians.
So if the country keeps collecting loan, is there any need to increase the taxes that will affect people? Because also it's affecting the consumer behavior, and this is also affecting companies, and many of the companies are shutting down due to this increased tax.
Well, the people who are borrowing you the money, they're not stupid. The people who are giving you the money, well, the people who are lending you the money, I borrow, you lend. You lend to me, I borrow from you. So the people who are lending us the money, they're not stupid. They themselves have interests to protect. So they're putting conditions in. We as a people know that we don't need any additional taxes. Taxes are already burdensome on a poor set of people. We don't need any additional taxes. But those who are lending us the money, the lenders, they are looking at it and they say, number one, we want to be sure we'll get our money back. How are we going to get it back? Where are we going to get it back from? Right? Number two, we want to be sure that the money is going for good purpose. Here they're talking about developing the non-oil sector. That's their motive. They want us to develop our non-oil sector so we're not totally dependent on oil. Why? Because they can't guarantee that $750 million loan can be paid back from oil and gas. Why? First of all, we've forward sold much of our oil. We've collateralized most of it with previous loans. So if they depend strictly on oil and gas, they may not be able to get their $750 million back for God knows how many years. So they're saying, increase your revenue base from other sources, other areas. Number one, it will make sure that you have enough money to pay us back. And number two, it will also help your country develop and grow to where maybe you don't need this type of loans in the future. So, you look at it and you say, loan. Well, there's in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with borrowing in and of itself, provided number one, you see where the money goes and what it does, and that it is beneficial to the generality of people. And number two, you have a means to pay it back within the specified time. As long as those two conditions are met, and it's not like when you have the means to pay it back means that you've not overborrowed in the past. Because if you've already overborrowed, then you don't have enough left over to pay for the new one. So you've got to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted to be sure that it is the right thing to do and you can pay it back. Because there's nothing worse than a country's debt rating or credit rating start dropping because you're missing payments, because you're slow payments, because you're asking for restructuring, you're asking for debt forgiveness. All these things, they end up eroding a country's credit rating, which can affect the rate at which you can borrow in the future, how much you can borrow in the future, and all sorts of things like that.
All right, let's move to insecurity in the country. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Borno State Governor Professor Babangida Zulum on Monday they discussed new strategies to curb the advance of jihadist factions of Boko Haram and the Islamic State West African province. Their discussion it centered on bolstering security through the rapid deployment of forest guards and expedited delivery of arms and equipment to North Eastern military formations. These meetings have been going on. But what do you think about this one again?
Well, this one was necessary because Boko Haram all of a sudden they've got a second wind. They've almost overrun Bono completely to the point that, in fact, some local governments are already almost under Boko Haram control, and they are advancing very close to some other local governments. And remember that state governments don't have any power to fight. They don't have army, they don't have police, they don't have national guard, nothing except for these paramilitary things like Amoteku and Ebubeagu and some of these ones that the individual states have tried to set up as paramilitary groups. But as a corporate entity, no state has the ability to defend itself. That's for the federal government. So when the governor Babagana Zulum starts crying out and running to Abuja, it's because the situation has become alarming. I mean, Boko Haram was in a lull for a while, but recently there's been a resurgence of Boko Haram activities, and they are so well funded that they've even got armed drones. They've got all kinds of armament equipment. They've got bomb making ability, and their staging ground is in the forests. In Nigeria, we have 1,200 and something odd forests, and this is where they gather themselves. They prepare themselves for an onslaught. This is where they make camp. So between the president and the governor, they've come up with this idea of setting up something called a forest guard, which is similar to Amoteku and similar to Ibubuago, but centered in the forests. So that if they can stymie Boko Haram's ability to gather themselves and prepare themselves for an onslaught, if their territories are monitored and administered by these forest guards, it'd be difficult for them to gather themselves and prepare for an attack. So it's a defensive measure pretty much, because it seems like offensive measures so far have not been very effective. Remember, they've overrun military installations recently. Military installations, army, with guns, with armored personnel carrier, with all kinds of things. Boko Haram has overrun military formations in Borno and other places recently. So when they have the wherewithal to be able to paralyze our military like that, how offensive can we get in terms of going out to go and try and confront them and enter a face-to-face battle with them? Remember a few years ago, right here at this table, we were talking about these Super Tucano jets that we bought from America.
Yes.
We're very excited. The Super Tucanos are coming, they're coming. And we assumed that once they got here, they would just strafe all the forest and Boko Haram would be a thing of the past. Today, we don't hear anything about Super Tucano again, not a word. Whether they still exist, whether they're still flying, whether they've been mothballed in some desert somewhere, we have no idea. But what we do know for now is that the army, the military in general, they're on the back foot in terms of this insurgency. So for now, we're looking for defensive measures as opposed to offensive measures. So defensive measure now is, let us occupy the forest where they gather themselves to prepare to attack. So if they don't have anywhere to gather, then they can't attack. They can't store arms. They can't store fuel. They can't get supplies. They can't release drones to go and cause damage. So it's a defensive measure. Will it work? We don't know. Like you said, there have been talk. When new national security advisor came in, Ribadu, in this administration, he swore up and down, heaven and earth, that Boko Haram was a thing of the past, and they go, well, look at them, they've got a second wind. So I've not seen that anybody has the ultimate solution to get rid of this problem. There's been a lot of talk, a lot of policy wonks and think tanks have been theorizing quite a bit, but nobody has really come up with a homegrown solution that can eliminate this scourge. At one point, they were talking about hiring mercenaries, asking for foreign help, taking in repentant Boko. Remember that program of taking in repentant Boko Haram? Some were even drafted into the army and all that. Some were forgiven and given clothes and bathed and educated and resettled. None of it has ever worked. So who will come up with the magic solution, the magic one? I really don't know.
Yeah, talking about deploying foreign security personnel in the country, so many people are talking about it. And what do you think are like the potential benefits and drawbacks if we deploy foreign security, especially to the northern
Well, there's
eastern
an issue
side?
of national pride. First of all, you go and bring foreign people is an admission of the fact that you yourself are incapable of handling your own internal security problem. So there's a thing about national pride and a blow to one's ego to have to admit that you're not up to the task. So without a doubt, there's some hesitancy. But at the end of the day, when you look at it and you look at the well-being of the people of that area, you look at the overall health of the nation, sometimes you have to do the unpalatable thing, whether, if it's going to bring the solution, even if it leaves a bitter taste in our mouths, if that's the way to go, if that's what's going to end it, then that's what we need to do. I remember there was a time when there was an American citizen who either was kidnapped by Boko Haram or something, or there was some sort of problem up in the north. And the US came and they sent in their Marines and they stormed the place and rescued the guy without one drop of blood being shed. And they got their person out and took him back to America. So you can imagine that if we were to go to those people, whether they will agree to do it or not and risk American lives to come to Nigeria to come and bail us out, what's in it for them? Remember, it's all about interests. What's in it for America to come here with their troops? For their own citizen, everything is in it for them because there's something called patriotism. American citizens are patriotic to their flag, to their constitution, to their president. So the flag, the constitution, and the president are in return patriotic to them as well. So for one single citizen, they will risk the entire US military. But for the whole country of Nigeria, why would they risk American lives to come here to come and help us defend against Boko Haram? But I have no doubt in my mind that if America came here, they would eliminate Boko Haram in a week. But will they come? I don't see it. So who will come? Mercenaries, people you pay raw, hard cash. Not naira, not naira, dollars, raw, hard cash. Employ mercenaries, which also can be a double-edged sword. And that's why there's hesitation to use mercenaries because you pay the guy. Boko Haram can offer him double after he has collected your money and you think he's working for you, but he's actually betraying you. Because if it's done for money as opposed to out of principle, then it's whoever the highest bidder is that's your master. So it's a risk. Using mercenaries carries a very big risk. But at the end of the day, I've heard of even during as far back as the Goodluck Jonathan regime that he wanted to bring Israeli Mossad, Israeli mercenaries to come and do the fighting, and it never really happened. But there's been talk about this for a long time. I think we are desperate to the point now that whatever the solution, wherever it will come from, let's welcome it.
Yes, Governor Zulum, he alleged that they are internal sabotage by some military personnel and politicians. So, do you think? So, people are saying that introduction of foreign guards can help, mitigate or exacerbate, these issues related to intelligence and everything going
Are the forest guards not coming from among our people? Where are they going to go and pluck them from Mars or pluck them? So they are coming from among our people. So these issues you are talking about, that within the military, within the political space, there are those who are compromising things. They are traitors. They are betrayers. So the forest guards are also coming from among the same place that the army and the politicians came from too. So why would they be any different? So of course, within the foreign guards, there are going to be those who will compromise as well. Boko Haram will call one or two of them and give them money, and they will give them the forest guards location and the forest guards schedule. So I don't necessarily think that the introduction of foreign guards will eliminate that notion of corruption. That corruption is very, very deep seated, and it runs wide within our DNA. So I think that collectively we have to all agree that we are fed up of this insurgency. I think the problem is because the particular setup of Nigeria, maybe because God loves us, insurgency hasn't gotten to the major cities yet. So the powers that be haven't really begun to feel the pain. The people who are being overrun by the insurgents, they are nobodies. They are ordinary Nigerians. They don't count. They're just numbers. So you hear 160 massacred by Boko Haram in this place, by in this place. They are ordinary Nigerians. They don't have any political clout. They don't have any political friends. They don't have money. They are not powerful people. So that's why this is it's like malaria, for example. It's been said that if malaria was in the US or in the UK and killing their people, a cure would have been found for it. But it's in Nigeria where people don't count. So nobody, no power that be has ever, although Bill Gates has been making noise about it recently, but nobody has ever really made a concerted effort to eliminate malaria. So this is because the people it affects doesn't affect any of the developed countries in the world that are rich. It affects poor people. Same thing with Boko Haram. They are victimizing poor people. So until we all, as a people, agree that enough is enough, and we begin to collect our mindset around that notion that we've had enough. Until such a time comes, I don't really see us being able to solve this problem.
All right, today Nigeria is celebrating Children Day, and different groups now they are calling that for the full implementation of the Child Rights Act across all Nigerian states. What do you think about this?
It would be it's a symbolic gesture, but it would be a good thing. I mean, happy Children's Day to all our children in Nigeria, and the children are the future,
Yeah.
and we should protect them in every way we can. And this Rights Act is a good thing in terms of what it proposes to do, and the protections it gives to children who are under a certain age. I think that both from a standpoint of in school and at home, that children need to have the most enabling and nurturing environment possible for their growth and development. I think they need all the love they can get. And what has invariably happened is that us parents have abdicated most of our responsibilities to teachers, to carers, to lesson teachers, because we ourselves are out on the hustle on a daily basis. And I think the less involvement parents are having with their children, the harder it is for those children to grow up well adjusted, responsible. So perhaps it should all begin with the economy in such a way that it takes pressure off parents and makes them more available and less stressed to be able to have a nurturing environment at home with more time at home for children to be able to learn. Parents are their first role models, so we look at our parents and emulate them. They are who we seek to walk in their shoes and things like that. So it's good that we've set aside a day. I think there's also a global Children's Day, but I don't think that's today. I think today is Nigeria in particular. So it's good we've set aside a day to recognize the importance of children. Many times we just look at them as children and we overlook them, and but it's important to recognize the fact that they are the future. The future belongs to them, and we need to start paying attention to them from now.
And one of the major, thing that people are talking about today, especially is children, that is how we can protect children from cyberbullying, especially with the fact that almost all of them now they have phones, even babies and all, they are all on social media. So, what ways do you think we can protect them from cyberbullying?
Well, there's been a lot of talk about trying to regulate the internet and regulate social media and all that for purposes of things like cyberbullying, for scams and things like that. But there's this whole notion about, oh, you can't curtail freedom of speech, you can't curtail our freedoms by trying to regulate the space. But I know that many of the service providers have ways that you can limit what your children are exposed to. There are certain, like I know that I think YouTube and Netflix, they have certain programming you can put into your decoder or into your account that will restrict what your children can watch, what they can be exposed to. So I think under a certain age, I think it's the parents' responsibility, not government. Once government starts getting involved in in prescribing things or in trying to regulate things, it risks trampling on our freedoms. But it goes back to the parent again to make sure that you are aware of what your children are watching, you are aware of who they are chatting with, cyberbullying or any type of bullying on its own, even physical bullying in school, it's been since time immemorial and it will be till eternity. It's not going to stop. But if your child comes home and has been bullied in school, what do? You can't go to the school and go and beat the boy that bullied your child. What you do is you teach your own child to stand up for himself next time such things happen. You teach your child to be strong, to be resilient, and to not, allow himself to be walked over in any way. Yeah, you can make an official complaint to the school, right? But even the school itself can't stop it because bullying comes from an individual perspective. It depends on the mindset of both the bullier and the bullied. Do you understand? So the authorities can't do anything about it. So it goes back down to the parent. First of all, the parent of the bully need to make sure that all their children are aware of how to comport themselves, especially in congenial, harmonious environments like a school. Then the bullied, the parents also need to toughen them up and let them know that you don't have to be violent, but you can stand up for yourself and make sure people know you won't take nonsense from anybody. Do you understand? So it's both sides of the fence that we need to work on. We're a work in progress. We have a ways to go, but I'm an incurable optimist about Project Nigeria. I think we're on the right track and we'll get there. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe my grandchildren, but Nigeria will thrive. Nigeria will be one of the greatest countries in the world down the road.
Yes, I guess we'll have to believe it. Thank you to everybody. Let's end this on lighter note, Mr. Mrs. this morning. Mrs. the first person speaking says, for peace to reign in this family, you have to stop running after women. And Mr. replied, no problem, but I can't do anything if they start running after me.
Mr. is
I'm saying the truth.
yes,
He won't do anything if they're running after him.
He's just there. He's not looking for anybody that coming to harass him. So what do you want him to do?
All right, thank you, sir, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure always.
Yes, do also like and follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. You can also visit our website www.vanguard.ng.